Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, it is both a great pleasure and a great privilege to open and to welcome you to the Tokushima International Consumers Forum. My name is Helena Leurent. I'm the Director General of Consumers International. We are the membership organization for consumer groups around the world, bringing together over 200 associations and advocacy groups in more than 100 countries. And we focus on empowering and championing the rights of consumers everywhere in the marketplace. As you, I am sure, know, consumer protection, consumer empowerment, consumer advocacy are critical to ensure we all live in a world where everyone has access to safe and sustainable products and services. Consumer advocacy, consumer protection, and consumer empowerment play a key role in forming the pathways on solutions to the global problems we all face. What are those? I feel there are three. First, ensuring that we have sustainable consumption patterns for everyone. Second, that we reduce and eliminate inequalities. And third, that the digital tools and technologies that we are building serve those first two goals, serve us as people in the marketplace. I've been asked to focus in on sustainable consumption and digital finance in particular in my comments and opening remarks here today. And I hope to share with you some observations from the work that we have been doing at Consumers International and with our members across the world. Thank you, and I hope we stay in touch on these topics. First, let's look at sustainable consumption. Leaders are increasingly understanding the major impact that sustainable consumption as well as sustainable production has in averting the climate crisis. If you look, the intergovernmental panel on climate change, the sixth assessment report, which came out in April earlier this year, acknowledged how much consumption shifts are crucial to meet decarbonization targets. They pointed out that 40 to 70% of the change, 40 to 70% of future emissions reductions could be achieved by what they call demand side interventions. That's essentially consumer interventions. At the same time, we know that consumers want change. Much research has been done on this front. Recent research showing that on average, 70% of people in every market are concerned about the climate crisis and want political and corporate leadership to solve. 62% of consumers from another piece of research said they were willing to change their consumption and purchasing habits to reduce environmental impact. It is, of course, an issue of increasing importance to the next generation of consumers, where sustainable choices are not just seen as the right thing to do in theory, but the thing you want to do. Of course, the challenge is that the thirst for change amongst consumers is not yet translating into action. And even for the most concerned consumers, the richest consumers, the gap between intention and action remains too high. Our view is the solution to this is to support consumers to take action and to make the marketplace make sustainability easy. Sustainable consumption should be the easy option and not down to consumer choice alone. From our part, we have on one hand been advocating at the highest levels at global fora for pathways to change. Most recently at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP26 in this case, and at the Climate Solutions event, Stockholm Plus 50. We shared our expertise and recommendations. We brought together our members and made a unified call for what businesses and governments can do to protect and empower consumers so they are actually supported to take action. More specifically, and another example, together with our members last year, we spotlighted how consumers can be supported to take action on plastic pollution. We did this over the course of World Consumer Rights Day in 2021. Every year, this is an annual celebration on March the 15th that unites the consumer movement around a key theme. And that's a chance for our network to demand that the rights of all consumers are respected and protected, and to protest against market abuses and social injustices which undermine those rights. Let's talk about plastic. Though it can be a highly useful material in everyday life, our consumption and production of plastics have become unsustainable. And of course, the plastic pollution crisis was exacerbated by the pandemic, the rise of single-use plastics we saw through face masks, gloves, food packaging, that united the global movement of consumer advocates around plastic waste for our 2021 theme. They raised awareness around what was called the 7 R's model of waste management. That includes to replace plastics, to rethink our use of plastics, to refuse when things should not be made of plastic, to reduce, to reuse, to recycle, and to repair. And we focused on rectifying some of the key issues facing consumers to enable them to take action. We called on business, government, and civil society to make sustainable consumption the easy choice for all. This included rectifying labeling on packaging, which is misleading, which is confusing. We also called to see greater design of products that are safe and durable and resource efficient. Now, those two examples aside, as the global challenges around us do not slow down, I continue to be inspired by the ways in which our members demand that consumer rights are upheld, whether within their own countries, across their regions, or on a global scale. And frankly, the forum you are part of today is a great example of this. We must continue our fight, both through our own consumer-centered initiatives and by joining together at opportune times to ensure our message is heard on the international stage, such as through events like COP27, which will be happening very soon. While I could speak much more on sustainable consumption and the crucial nature of that challenge, I will now turn to the second focus, which is more around the way in which digital products help us meet our global challenges, and in particular, fair digital finance. As I'm sure you will know, over the last several years, digital technologies have become a key enabler for consumers of financial services. They shape payments, lending, insurance, wealth management. It's now estimated that by 2024, digital banking consumers are expected to exceed 3.6 billion. But the rise of digital financial services has not only brought great opportunities, it's brought greater concerns and risks. And these include inefficient regulatory and supervisory mechanisms, unsatisfactory consumer redress systems, data misuse, fraud, over-indebtedness, and frankly, digital infrastructure that can't keep pace with the way in which consumers need these services. So, we talked about World Consumer Rights Day last year as an example of a campaign and a way in which we launched into a longer term piece of work. For this year, for World Consumer Rights Day, we focused on fair digital finance. 95 consumer advocacy organizations took action. They marked the day through very diverse and innovative activities. Our members in Japan or India or Panama or Indonesia organized rural outreach programs, promoted the message in schools through national media and at in-person events and webinars. And this was all making sure that we adhere to the pandemic restrictions that were in place at the time, but nonetheless making sure that consumer protection and empowerment took a stance.
Let's not leave consumers behind. Let's walk with them into this technology, the digital technology.
Win-win has to include consumers.
We can't rely on regulation staying ahead of the risk. And that's where consumer advocates elevating the voice of consumers is the best way to stay on top of what's happening day to day because it's evolving so quickly.
We think the best way to do this is to engage with and understand the financial consumer, either through research that we do directly or through engaging with consumer advocacy organizations that can help us.
By coming together, we will have a global impact not locally, but the whole world.
A group like yours is not just a global voice group, it's also a community of practice for your day-to-day challenges.
And I think where Consumers International can come in is in actually bringing all of that together. So bringing together consumer advocates from around the world and with businesses, with regulators, to actually talk about how we ensure that as these new products emerge, they actually operate in a way that's fair for consumers.
I really hope after this week, after hearing all the priorities, after hearing all the ideas, we are committed to put much more resources in driving this agenda, because it is so important for global consumers.
We believe that measures that reduce information asymmetry and bring transparency have the potential to empower consumers to make better choices.
We are doing efforts to include such topics right from the school education, because that's where a child needs to learn about all the financial transactions that you're going to do in future as a consumer.
From your perspective, from the consumer advocacy community, what other channels do we need to use to make consumers more aware, and what do we need to be aware of while making them aware from a consumer's rights perspective?
We'd like you to stay in contact with us so that together we can ensure a digital financial services sector and a digital marketplace that's inclusive, that's safe, that's data protected and private, and that's sustainable for all of us. Taking a multi-stakeholder approach to meet these ongoing challenges has become central to our approach. And so as part of the campaign, we sparked the first ever global conversation on fair digital finance. Over 5 days, we held, I believe it was 18 impactful events, convening leaders from academia, civil society, consumer advocacy organizations, foundations, businesses, governments, who came together to address the most pressing issues facing users of digital finance and those who are excluded from it. This allowed us as a movement to promote a consumer vision for fair digital finance, to put questions to decision makers to address the main concerns in digital finance relating to inclusivity, safety, data protection and privacy, and sustainability for everyone. We felt these were the 4 key pillars that need to be in place for the future of digital finance for everyone. We highlighted the negative impacts on finance for women. We launched a new initiative to address digital finance issues with a disproportionate impact on low and middle income countries, and members joined together for a major call on regulation of buy now, pay later products. The latter has since driven a government commitment in Australia to regulate such products. We explored how data is transforming consumer relationships with digital finance, and we brought consumer advocacy groups into direct conversation with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development to help shape global protection instruments. And as this forum will explore today, we demonstrated the opportunities in digital finance to shift the choices taken by consumers to more sustainable ones. Importantly, and I think this is something we should do on every occasion, we closed the event by hearing the valuable views of the next generation. With this in mind, I've been delighted to see how the Tokushima Forum is providing a space for younger consumer advocates to share their views and experiences. The next generation of consumers will be left with many issues resulting from the current global crisis. We must work with them to shape the solutions. That is both the right and wise thing to do. They provide key insights on how best to reach other younger consumers and to build on the enthusiasm we are seeing across this group to campaign for better consumer protection and empowerment in our future marketplaces. The consumer advocacy movement may be a small one in comparison to the likes of others, but it is a very powerful one with a clear role to play in meeting the crises of our times. This is why consumer advocates coming together with others through moments such as the Tokushima Forum is key. It allows us to galvanize around the issues together, to share, to learn, to be inspired, and to streamline and build our approaches together. while I would very much like there to be with you there in person, I celebrate the conversations that you'll be having together. I encourage you to build together, and I look forward to hearing more on the outcomes of the event's next steps and conversations you have. As you build together this week, I wish you every success and thank you for the opportunity to connect. Stay safe, stay well.